Okay. Welcome everybody to my studio. My name is Michael Markowsky, and today we are going to be making a painting by another one of my very favorite artists. This time it is by the artist Bill Traylor. Bill Traylor is probably one of the most well-known and most beloved of all quote-unquote folk artists. And we're going to look at some of his work. This is a great book that was produced by the Smithsonian a few years ago. They had a great big exhibition of his work. This one's from the library. We'll take a look maybe at some of the images, but let's get right into it here because we may want to do a bunch of paintings today. One of the great things with Bill Traylor's work is that he made a lot of work over a very short period of time. He didn't start making art until he was 85 years old, 85 years old, and only made art, or at least the art that we have was made for about a 4 or 5 year period of time. And then he died, I think, at age 90 or so. Let's kind of just take a quick look. Let me see, what age would that say he was when he died? I'm not exactly sure. Let's say... But towards the very, very end of his life, he might have been making art, but some of the people who were kind of quote-unquote caring for him threw some of that art out, or at least it's never seen the light of day because I don't think they liked it, and they didn't think it stood up to some of his previous work, which is a common thing with artists. Willem de Kooning would be the most sort of famous example of that, the abstract expressionist painter of people who were minding his business affairs, didn't like the last paintings that he did, and it wasn't until much later that they kind of surfaced. Anyway, let me just show a few things here. Here's the Facebook page. You can join the Facebook page. There's a link, the very first link, I believe, goes to this, and you can see all the art that people have made recently. Oh, cool! Look at all these people getting around to doing the Tiger Woods and Jacob Lawrence painting that we did just on Thursday, the marathon 5-hour painting session. I'm surprised that anybody painted along with me during that time, but I appreciate those of you who did stick around. Of course, you can watch it and skip ahead if you want to. But anyway, there's also the link to the Dropbox, and I think that's link number 2. And if you click on that, you'll see a bunch of files in here. Now, the reason why there's so many files, well, there's actually only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 actual paintings in here. And those paintings each have a JPEG and a PDF associated with them. And the JPEG and PDF are exactly the same. They're just different file types. So if you click on there, you'll see an image like this. This is one of his paintings. This is called Black Turkey. Let's just make that bigger. Black Turkey, and then there's the tracing version of it that I traced. There is Man in Black with Blue Cigar, or Man in Black and Blue with Cigar and Suitcase. I don't think he titled these himself. This often was the titles that people who bought their work, collectors or curators, ascribed to them. So here's the tracing for that one. Here is Man in Blue Suit Pointing, which is on the thumbnail to the video here. This is a particularly famous, probably one of his most famous paintings. It's been reproduced a few times, including an excellent book of poetry that I recommend. It's a great little book that I've been reading a little bit before bed. Anyway, so that image has been reproduced a few times. There's another one here. This is Wild Animal. Again, did he intend it to be that, or is it a dog, or a horse, or any other kind of animal? Here's the tracing of that. And then lastly, there's woman in O and X pattern dresses and the tracing of that. So I'm going to begin with the painting, the probably one of his most famous paintings. I'll begin with that, and so, but we may, depending on how much time we have, I might do a few of them, and I'm going to do them in sequence, so we don't have 5 paintings all ending 5 hours from now. But if you print them out, you'll have kind of a little stack of papers like this, right? And I'll show you how to trace these because I didn't get a chance to trace them ahead of time today. And they'll only take us a few minutes of time. Maybe when we were waiting for some paint to dry, I'll break out this behemoth of a book. So we'll do one of these at a time here. And I'll take this and this. And I'm going to put some tape up here. Now you see I've added a little border here, and that's going to be, we're going to do a little trompe-l'oeil optical illusion of a piece of paper on the canvas here. So that's, we'll see that as we go. So let's take this, the way I'm going to transfer the image is I'm going to use carbon paper. You can order this kind of, there's a link to it in the video description below if you want to buy it directly from Amazon. But you can get it at Staples or lots of different places, and they come in these sheets. And you can see, it's kind of, maybe it's a little bit hard to see, but if the light just hits it just right, like I think around here, you can see I've used this particular sheet many times. And I'm going to use, we'll see, let's do one more. I think we might be able to get 1 or 2 more tracings out of it. So just because you've used it once doesn't mean it's garbage. You can get multiple tracings out of here. I like to use a colored pencil to do the tracing, both because I like color, but I also, because I've done this many times, often what happens is if you're using like a regular black pencil, gray charcoal or something, it can be kind of hard to tell what lines you've done and which lines you haven't done yet because they all look black on black, right? So I just put that carbon paper underneath there. And with this particular carbon paper, it doesn't matter if the which side up you put it. Although there is some, I have used some that only will make marks on one side, and you got to make sure you, because that's another mistake I have done, is put it down on the wrong side and spend an hour tracing, and you peel it off and go, oh. Like for instance, you can see it's transferring onto here, onto the back, and you can see that image slowly transferring onto here. So. Thank you for the tip about the background music being a little loud there. One of these things, there's a lot of moving parts, and trying to do all this stuff all by myself is a bit of a challenge. And you know, I don't have a producer or somebody who's just sitting there just watching everything, making sure things are in focus or the sound is right. So I rely on people like yourselves to let me know when things aren't working. Okay. I was contemplating just drawing these just right out of, you know, without using any kind of tracing, which we used to do a lot of in earlier episodes. But it kind of goes into a whole thing that we'll kind of talk about throughout today's episode about outsider quote-unquote outsider art or folk art or vanguard art, as it's, I think that's probably vanguard art. I like that one the most, because it doesn't sort of belittle the artist or the movement as much as outsider or folk art does, because there's certain kind of associations to those terms that sort of imply, you know, someone is less than, literally outside, you know, like a space alien or something. Oops, see, it's good before you remove the paper. That's why I also tape it down. I can see, oh, I forgot that eye here. Right, and you can see the little bit of the top of the border didn't get there because probably this graphite paper only came up to here or something, right? And only a little bit, but so that's okay, that's not a big deal. Pretty easy to fix that. So, I'm going to peel this off. We don't really need this piece of paper anymore, unless you, I mean, I've been saving them. I don't know why. If you ask my wife, I save too many things. But, I don't know. Well, there'll probably be a cool, I could, you know, if you want to use those as, coloring sheets for little kids, I think that would be a cool way to use them. Give them, you've already done a little bit of drawing on there, so they're ready to go. Okay, so I also, just before we began, what I had done is I gessoed this with some white gesso, or your regular gesso, acrylic-based gesso. There is oil-based gesso, but if we're painting with oil or oil paints, you'd want to use, you can use either acrylic or oil-based if you're using oil paint. But if you're using acrylic, you want to use everything acrylic. Everything's got to be acrylic. And then I sanded it down with some 220 sandpaper. So it's just a little bit smoother than the canvas board right out of the box. I should also say that I just spent like $150 on new canvas boards. I've got stacks of them over here. I've got bunches of these. So if you're thinking which ones are the ones that I suggest you buy, it's the ones that are in the video description down below there. I've got links to these where you can buy them directly, right? So you can see how many come in a big stack like that, and I've got 4 of these down here. I think I've got about 80 canvas boards. So I'm going to be doing this for a long time, not tonight, but over. I'm thinking about going all the way until 2022. So beyond just, anyway, we can talk about my plans for the future as we go now. Let me see. Okay. So what I mentioned before is what I want to do is I want to do a little bit of like a fake paper look here. Now this, oops, let's go to this image here. This is the original, and so one of the things that Bill Traylor would do is he often just painted on scrap pieces of cardboard and wood that he found. Bill Traylor lived a very tragic life. I mean, he was born into slavery in, I think, what, 1850, and let's see if we just kind of go look a little bit at his biography here. And there's a really great children's book that was released. There's lots of great videos. You just type it into YouTube, you'll find lots of stuff. I encourage you to watch some of these. In fact, if we just, I'm not going to play it because this video will get taken down if I do. But here's the Smithsonian Museum, or American Art Museum, which had a show of his, you know, just a couple of years ago. And they made a number of great videos. That's the video that big book I showed you was from. And so I encourage you to watch some of that. You can even pause the video right now and go and watch those. But, so Bill Traylor was born on a plantation, was born into slavery. And I always think it's just as a little sidebar, rather than calling someone a slave, saying that they were born into slavery or they were, you know, they were forced into slavery at some point, I think is a really important kind of distinction, as anyway, we'll go into some semantics. But anyway, so after he was quote unquote emancipated, he was then a sharecropper, which is someone who gets to live on the plantation in exchange for working on the plantation. And if many people call it slavery by another term, and he lived like that for another 50 or so years until he was in his, I think, mid-70s. He moved to Montgomery, Alabama, where he was basically, he worked, I think, in a shoe factory. He slept on the floor of a funeral home. When he wasn't sleeping on the street, he was basically homeless towards the last 15 years of his life, including this period where he was super productive. And so during that time, he was making art for nickels and quarters to survive. And there was a few people, I'm trying to remember what was his name, Michael Shannon or Mark Shannon. He was an artist himself, a white fellow who saw his work and helped organize some exhibitions on him, and sort of discovered him, if you want to use that kind of a term, even though he, anyway, there's a lot of problematic stuff about Bill Traylor's biography, and then what happened to him after he was discovered, and subsequently what happened to him after he died, which is, a pretty, we'll talk about this as we paint, because Sue says, or what? Let me see. Did I order the wrong size of boards here? I think no, these are 9x12. These are the same size of boards that I've been using throughout. Right? Let me just look at some of the very first canvases. Just looking at Sue's comment. Yeah, no, these are all 9x12. That's what I've been using. But you're certainly welcome to use whatever size of boards you like. Okay. Stay on track, stay on track, stay on track. Yeah. Okay. So, he painted on these pieces of paper and cardboard. So what I want to do is sort of do a little fake shadow around here. So how are we going to do that? Let's get some paint out. I'm going to use a little bit of tape, just as a little bit of we haven't used tape to create a hard edge in a while, and I thought maybe let's just do that for anyone who's joining us. This might be their very first episode that they're watching, so I'll get out all my materials here, all of my paint. Everything fits inside of a shoebox, which I like to mention so people don't think they need to get thousands of dollars worth of stuff. So there's 6 different paints that I recommend you get. Here's our, let's put the cool red there. I'm already getting messy. I'm probably not going to use much of these colors. We're going to use mostly just, he had a very limited palette, Bill Traylor. So, and I just put that in the wrong place. So I'll switch these around. Just to, I want to keep everybody on their toes, right? Let me see, warm yellow. Keep forgetting to go buy some more. I have about 5 of these tubes that have barely any yellow left in them. Okay, so, and then let's get some white out. And a little bit of black. And black, I mean, you could put about, as we've seen, we barely need any black. I'm also going to use a little bit of matte medium. So I'm just going to set that upside down. I need to get more of that too on my list of things to get. So the first thing we want to think about is, what color do we want this outside to be? We could make it white, we could make it black. There's all sorts of different options here. But I think we may want to just take a quick little look at Bill Traylor's paintings, just to kind of, you can see his color palette, right? We've got blue, we've got this very dark red, and I've seen a little bit of yellow and green. There's a little bit of yellow you can see in here. Again, a little bit. But again, his color palette is quite minimal, and some browns, right? And that's obviously also related to the fact that he was just basically using whatever found materials he could find, right? Poster paint, house paint, people would just give him things, or he would find things as he was, you know, going around. And until that artist I mentioned, Shannon, whatever, I can't remember his first name, found, or not found him, because he was not lost, but was the first one to buy him some proper art supplies that he used for a short period of time. So the painting we're going to make is, or at least this first one, has is blue and mostly blue, a little bit of black. So, and then we're also going to paint this as a little bit of kind of a warm brown. So what color could we paint this? I think I might paint this that kind of reddish color that we have here. I'm going to go for something like that. Okay, so to get that kind of a color, I'm going to use a cool red, and I'm going to paint that around these edges. And then I'm going to do a little bit of the shadow, and then I'm going to tape it off, and then we're going to paint on the inside. So a few little steps here, but you'll see how the thinking goes as we go. So I'm going to use the cool red, or cool, like a slightly brown, in the background, because I want it to move backwards, right? I want it to look like the paper is sitting on the background. And to do that, we would want to use a cooler color and then a warmer color, so that, because the cool color wants to recede, right? And I hope there's those of you that have been following me around for 5 months, I hope when I say things like that, you're just like, oh, yeah. Which is great. If those kind of concepts are just like, you know, obvious to you now, and that means I've done a little bit of my job, and you've absorbed some of the most basic principles of painting. All right, so let's take a little bit of the cool red. I could probably use that directly, but I'm going to make a bit of a brown here. So I'm going to take my cool blue. Now, that color is now a purple, right? Which, there's nothing wrong with purple. In fact, I kind of like that. But I'm going to make it a little bit more of a brown. So I'm going to take a scoop of yellow. And I'm going to need more red here. I'll just probably scoop up the rest of that yellow. Oops, that's a lot of blue I just picked up. So I've got a very dark color. Do I want that dark color? I don't mind it. Don't mind it. It's hard to tell when we, you know, we might not know if it works until towards the very end of the painting. So So, what do I think? I'm going to put a little bit more red in here. Because what I kind of want that that dull red here. And how close? Mine's a little bit more of a little purple. So, but you know, I think it's going to go a little bit lighter as I paint it. So let's just kind of see how it goes. Because again, we have white in the background, and that white of the paper is going to make a difference. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some water in here. Whoa, that's way too much. I don't need all of that. Yeah. So the water is going to dilute it a little bit. So you can see a little bit of kind of the true color in there as the water gets involved. And I like this is kind of nice. I like this right here. And all that water is not too bad either. Okay. So let's take this color and paint it quite liberally on here. I'm going to blow dry it in a few minutes as well, so may not want to put too much on. And I don't mind if I go over the so-called edge of the paper there, of where the paper is going to be when we paint it, because I'm going to put some tape there, and I'm going to put some white over top of it to kind of hide it. So we'll get a nice sharp edge eventually. But I am going to make sure I get all of my sides of the canvas done. There we go. The only thing I don't want is kind of big peaks on here where the paper or where these edges are, because this is supposed to be in behind, not in front, right? Wonder if I might have to do a second coat here. Okay, so let's get the hair dryer out. I'm going to blast it with a little, just to help it dry a little faster here. Okay, so I'm going to, now that that's dry, I'm going to put a second coat on here. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a deeper, richer color. You know, if I didn't put the water in, it's possible that I wouldn't have to do a second coat. But magenta is definitely one of those colors that is generally quite transparent. So magenta being our cool red, sorry. So I might have worked a little bit better. Oops. But yikes. Okay, I'm going to blow dry that again, and I may even do a third coat on here just because of the way it's going on. Kind of quite transparent, so. I know you're probably like, oh, it's going to take us 20 minutes to make this painting. Haha! I always have a way to make it take a little bit longer. Okay. I have to remember my my wife started back to work after maternity leave on Monday, which is super exciting. That's not what I got to remember. I remember that very clearly, but she's working from home, as I'm sure, as I am, as the majority of people on Earth are doing. But my painting pants are in our bedroom / her office, and I didn't want to burst in there and disturb her. I should have done that last night, but so I'm not wearing my painting pants tonight, which means I have to remember not to wipe my paint all over my pants. We could probably take bets on the likelihood that these pants are going to be painting pants 2 hours from now. I don't have high hopes that they will last, but anyway. So I'm going to blow dry this one more time. There's a few little uneven parts. That doesn't bother me. I don't mind that it's a little bit more transparent in a few places. I just wanted a little bit of that darker, richer color that we have in here. Okay, so let's just blow dry that one more time, and then I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow around here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna kind of like work backwards, right? We're gonna put the shadow down before we even put the paper down. So what I want to do is I want to sort of add a little bit of a darker color that goes primarily kind of on the bottom. Usually we have light that comes from above, right? So the light is usually kind of hitting here. So we may or may not even have a shadow up there, but we might have a little bit of shadows, let's say, because the paper might not be fully flat. So to get that shadow, I'm probably just going to add a little bit of, let's say, the cool blue. Let's just mix this here and a little bit of my warm blue. So I got this darker blue. Let's mix some of the color we've just been painting with here. So now we've got this kind of purple. Okay. Let's get that. Maybe a little bit more of the warm blue. A little bit more of the cool blue just to get a darker color. Okay. So I got this color. The next thing that I'm going to use is my slow dry medium. Right? Again, there's a link to this in the video description below. And I'm going to mix this in here. Let's see, that was about like 1:1. So I put a bunch of it in there. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in a few places and then kind of blend it out to kind of create a little bit of a soft edge. Okay. So I want to get the brush I'm going to use for blending out. Now there's a few you can just use, like, this is I remember a few episodes ago I was using this for blending and it started to kind of fall apart. It's not the best. This is just a cheap $1 brush, probably from the dollar store. And cheap brushes just start to like hair, you know, it's gonna start breaking. We get these little tiny, you can see even just right me fiddling with it, looks like little eyelashes start to come off. It doesn't bother me too much, especially on a darker color. It's not that much of as an issue. But I did order a bunch of these brushes. There are blending brushes. This is about $20 on Amazon. I will put a link to it after the episode. This is the Princeton Select 1-inch. The kind of common term you might hear is like a mop brush, kind of like you're mopping up the floor. And often these brushes are also used by watercolor artists to kind of quickly do a wash, right? So acrylic painters will use this as like a blending brush. Do I want to use this today? Yeah, let's see. Okay. So I'm actually going to put a little more slow dry medium in here because I'm a little chatty Michael. And just so that, because when we're doing any kind of blending like that, it's easier when the paint is wet longer, right, for it to blend properly. Now I got that blended up. Let's just use a smaller brush to put it onto the canvas. Okay. Okay. So this is going to be kind of subtle. Where's my painting? So as there isn't really a shadow here to speak of because of the way it's been photographed, and that would be if the person who took that photograph did their job really well, because we don't usually want any kind of shadows. But for our purpose, we do. We want to kind of play with this a little bit. So I'm just going to put a line down here. And again, don't worry about making it a nice sharp line, because we're going to paint over that area in a little bit here. So I'm just going to put this in. I can, even without using a blending brush, I can kind of just softly kind of brush it out. In fact, I don't even know if I need my blending brush here, because I can do a pretty good job of just slowly blending that out. Let's use the cheap one here, the cheap brush. So really, I'm just going along that bottom edge. And then let's imagine that there's just a little bit, right? Maybe the paper kind of is a little bit, buckles a little bit. And so I'm just going to give it a few little bumps along the sides. Maybe it's a little bit, like, you know, it's kind of slightly warped. So I'll just put a bit of that, and then just kind of gently blend that in. So right now with this color, the overall effect is going to be very, very subtle. If you wanted it to be darker, then you could add a little bit of black in there if you wanted. And you know, it's possible that after I finish this, I may want to kind of touch it up a little bit, and you can do that. Again, don't worry about what's happening in here. It's just this edge. So what's happening is I need to blow dry this because the paint, I'm just now just scrubbing paint off of this surface rather than being able to blend it. So let's just hit it with the hairdryer and we'll come back for another pass. Oh. And my blending brush clearly was a little bit wet. Still had a lot of paint on it, so I should be, every time I use it, I should be just trying to get some of that paint off. I'm just going to do that one more time in a few places just to darken it, right? It's like we're doing a couple of layers. This is just a little extra fun thing I thought for this painting. I was even considering doing a little demo on like how to glue paper onto canvas for this. And I decided against it because in my mind I started thinking like, then we start getting into this artist. As I said, there's a lot of problems that have kind of arisen after he died, and I just like, it kind of felt like we were maybe doing a little teaching people how to forge his work, which is a big problem in the art world right now, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to contribute to that. I want these classes to be fun, and I don't want somebody to say, oh, I learned how to make fake build trailer paintings by watching Michael Markowsky's class. I'm like, oh man, that would be like the most horrible kind of outcome of today's episode. So okay, so just these little highlights on the side here. Let's do one little, blend this out even more. We'll see how effective that is. And we won't know for another, like, 20 minutes or so how well this all turned out, so... So Paula says, you know, I'm assuming you're talking about my painting pants. I could use some old cloths to protect myself, perhaps. I might have a secret wish to have more painting clothes, however. One thing I have done, if I'm ever in a real big pickle, is you can just take your clothes and turn them inside out. You know, when I teach classes in person, and people, you know, often people are like, oh, I had to come right from work, I couldn't, didn't have time to go home and get my painting clothes. I'll say, well, you know, you got a really nice, you know, new $200 slacks on. I don't want you sitting here in your underwear, but you could maybe go and just change your clothes and just invert them, flip them inside out. And that way, if you get paint on them, the paint is just going to be on the inside of your clothes and not a big white splotch on your black trousers or sweater or anything like that. Oops. See, I'm talking to myself here. Well, one thing I notice often happens, just like what just happened there, is, you know, I'm washing my brush, and sometimes little driplets of water get onto the canvas. And if I don't catch them soon, they end up kind of slowly dissolving the paint away. And I don't want that happening, so... Just always... Usually, I wouldn't have that right next to my canvas here. But I'm taking risks for you guys. I'm showing you what not to do. Let's now blast this with some air, and then I'm going to put some tape on this. Okay, so it's really important that this is nice and dry because I'm going to put tape over this red edge and hide it. And if there's any wet paint here, when I peel, that paint is going to stick to the underside of the tape. When I peel it off, it's going to be a mess. So let's use this tape here. So it's still a little bit tacky there, so just give it a second while it loses the heat. Well, maybe they'll start up at the top here because I haven't been painting too much up there recently. So what I want to do is I want to think about where the paper is going to go. So, and I can use the tape. The tape doesn't have to be perfectly straight either. It doesn't have to, it can be a little bit wonky. He wasn't using, you know, nice clean sheets of paper. The paper he's using is, you know, leftover, discarded cardboard and paper, and sometimes the edges aren't straight and they're torn and wrinkled. And okay, so I just want to make sure I have maybe a little bit of red here, or a little bit of the shadow as I go here. I don't want to cover any white. All right, put that down. I am a little leery that I'm going kind of fast, so I'm a little anxious that when I peel this off, I might get some of that tape sticking to, or the paint sticking to my tape just because I'm moving quickly, but hazards of the business. So again, remember I put a little shadow on here. So if I put a little shadow on there, what I might want to, as I come down here, just sort of bend the tape in, and let's kind of maybe bend it back out, and just giving it a little, like, so it's not a perfectly straight line. Okay. Wonder, it's cutting a little bit close. I don't like, again, I don't want any white underneath that tape for this effect to be convincing. I can touch this stuff up later, but if I don't have to touch it up, then that's a whole other step I've saved myself, right? So you see, I'm just bending the tape around just a little bit. It's probably not even going to be noticeable afterwards. And so then I go over these edges with my fingernail. Because I'm going to seal this in. I don't want any paint getting underneath that tape. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some just regular matte medium, right? You could, if you use gloss medium, it'll work fine. The only thing is gloss medium is shiny, and if we you might see a little it might be a little bit, it's harder to hide the gloss. Matte, I think, is just a little bit better for this purpose if you got it. If you don't have it, don't worry too much. So I don't have much left in here. If I do more paintings later on, I'll probably use the matte or the gloss medium, and we'll see if we can notice that effect at all. But I don't imagine so. But so I just squeezed it right out onto the canvas, and we're just going to brush it nice and evenly over these edges. It doesn't matter, I could paint over this face. It doesn't matter if I get paint over there. It's not of concern at all what happens on here. I'm using the acrylic just to create a seal here. If you don't have any extra clear medium like this, what could you use instead? You could try to do this with just the tape and paint directly without using any medium at all. Your chances of success are I've done it, and it in a pinch can work. It's just a little bit risky. You really got to make sure that you've gone and really rubbed those edges so that paint can't get underneath there. You could use, I guess you could try using slow dry medium or glazing fluid or Mod Podge. You could try using all those different mediums because they're all clear medium. I've never tried using it for this purpose, so that it'd be kind of interesting to see how well it works. Rick just said, "Talk about a starving artist. You know all the tricks." Well, you know, when you're starving, you know, you'll learn pretty quick how to survive, right? Okay, that's pretty good. So again, that acrylic is trying to seal that tape really well. And now we're going to paint, I'm going to paint white right over this. Before I even bother mixing any color, I just want to get rid of this edge entirely. So I'm just going to take some white right out of the tube. And I'm going to paint this on here, and I'm also going to paint it. You see how I'm painting in? I want it as much as possible to avoid that paint getting underneath the canvas. So you see how it's almost like this cross-hatching effect here? Right, so I don't want to push any paint underneath there. keep on going. This takes, to do this well and for it to turn out well, it takes a little bit of patience. Oops, see, I just, see that, doing that is, you sometimes, as I'm saying, as explaining how to do it, I just do it the wrong thing, which is typical for me, but it takes a little bit of time to prep it like this, but if we do it well, fingers crossed, we will have a really cool result. I think this is also one of these techniques that I'm sure a few of you are like, okay, I'm not really sure what we're doing here right now. I'm just gonna follow along and we'll see. Okay, but it's, I think it's once you know, when we peel the tape off and you're like, you'll go, oh, okay, okay, now it makes sense. Now I know why we, and it might be one of those things that if you want to do the other paintings that I've included in the Dropbox, like, okay, now I can do it maybe a little bit better the second time around because I figured out that method. Which is the same really for any of the artworks that we do, right? The first time it's a little confusing maybe, and then you do it and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, right. Now, depending what color we put on afterwards, that might be enough, or and depending on how much paint you put on there, you know, on your painting, for those shadows, that might be enough. I'm going to blow dry this, and I'm going to add another coat of white, just to, why not, right? It'll just, because I still see some of that color showing through, so. Okay, yeah, so you could see like when I painted it, there was a number of places I was like, okay, I could probably, but now as it dries, it gets a little bit more transparent again, so it just needs another coat. If I've done this well enough, and I've put this paint on properly, I can be much more careless, I guess, with the second, third, fourth coats, because at this point I should have 2 layers of paint that have helped create a nice seal here. So, but just because that's in theory, right? But just because something works in theory doesn't mean it's going to work in real life. So, despite that fact, I still strongly encourage you to paint, you know, away from the edge. So you can see this, well, I don't know if you can really see, but there's a little edge there from when I painted the red. And remember I was talking 20 minutes ago about I didn't want peaks, right? That's a peak that formed there. It almost looks like the tape edge there. It's so thick. Okay, much better. And I want this to, to be as smooth as possible. I also want to try to avoid any edges when we do that. So we'll blow dry this, and then we're going to mix up the quote-unquote paper color, and we'll put that down. Okay, so now let's mix the color of the paper. Now we got a, you can make whatever color you want. I'm going to make a brown. Just got paint on my new paintbrush, which sounds, I guess, pretty silly, but you know, sometimes when you get these with a new paintbrush, this is like, it's hard to even use it that first time. You're like, oh, I gotta save you for the most. It's like a fine champagne or something. Like, I'm gonna save it until like the queen comes by, and then we'll. Anyway, so let's. I'm gonna mix just sort of like a light brown, maybe not quite as dark as the one in the image. But I'll show you how to do that if you do want to do that. So our palette here, I'm going to use some warm yellow. I'm probably going to use most of this, but I'm not going to mix it all in until I get pretty confident I know what I'm doing here. So I'm taking warm yellow and then warm red. Just a little bit more red. Okay. And then I'm going to take a little bit of warm blue, like not a lot, right? In fact, I put it to the side and we'll just see. We mix this together. All right, and we got this kind of sandy color. And then you just say to yourself, like, what do you think? Does it need to be lighter or darker or more red or darker, more, you know, so if we add a little bit more blue to it, it's going to get a little bit darker. Say we add just a bit more red to it. We'll make it a bit warmer. So I like that color. That's pretty nice. It's pretty close to, you know, obviously it's much, as I said, I want it to be a little bit more yellow. So I think I actually need more yellow on here anyway, because I won't have enough to cover the paper. Oh, I don't need that much, but maybe that will be for subsequent paintings, maybe. We'll see. Let's put that to the side. That's kind of nice. I kind of like that. Again, it's up to each of you to decide how dark you want to make that. If I wanted it to be much closer to that, I would just put maybe more of the warm blue in there. And that will just slightly darken it. And if it gets too green, you just balance it out with a little bit more red. Okay. So I'm going to use this paint directly onto the canvas. I'm not going to put any water in it or at all. And I'm going to paint right over the tape, obviously, because I'm just realizing I didn't make enough of a mixture, which is, that's fine. We'll just mix it again. No. I am getting a much darker color, whether I like it or not, Michael. Okay. Let's get some more yellow on there. It's going to take that new color, slightly different, slightly darker, and just kind of blending it with the existing one that I painted moments ago. I can imagine a few people kind of getting a little bit worried that maybe the original sketch is disappearing a bit. I'm not too worried about that, not only because it's a kind of a simpler image, but it's also going to get a little bit more transparent as it dries, so. Let's see, not the most even. You can see I'm starting these brush strokes on the tape and carrying them all the way through to the other side. I'm just going to scrape through a few where it's, you can tell it's built up a little bit thick. I think I might do a second coat of this. I'm going to blow dry it, and then we'll do a second quick coat. Okay, I'm going to do this again, put another coat of paint on here. Now this is, I don't know if I'm going to have enough, so I think I am going to add a little bit of water. I want to be careful because too much water in here is going to especially if I start really fiddling with this coat, could cause this to kind of could start scrubbing some paint away. So I don't want to do that. In fact, let's just put a little bit more paint on the palette. A little bit more red. Tiny bit of blue. We're pretty close back to the original there. Again, I'm just going to get a little bit more water. There. I mean, the amount of water I put on there was negligible, right? Basically just dipped my brush into the water. Just going to help it spread a little bit. Okay. And then this is just going to give it a little bit more of an even surface here. It's true that my figure is disappearing a bit. I think when it dries, I should get a little bit more visibility back. Cool. That looks pretty good. Okay. You know when it's kind of working well when you can't really see the tape, you kind of got to go do a look and you're like, huh, where's the edge of the tape again? That tells me that I've done a pretty good job of layering the paint, I think. That's at least what I tell myself. So I got a big host of brushes here. I think it's while this now dries. I'm going to use a blow dryer in a second, but this is a good opportunity just to kind of do a little studio maintenance here. Clean these brushes up. Again, I'm going to clean these again later on tonight after the show's over. So this is not, when I'm cleaning, I run them under the sink. I use a little bit of, I have a paint soap. I think we've talked about it before, and I'm pretty sure it's in the video description below. Okay, let's blow dry this, and then we'll paint our man in blue. Okay, so now at this stage, if you wanted, you could peel the tape off. Now, I'm just going to keep mine on because it's going to look better at the very, very end to peel that tape off, and we'll see what it looks like. Just a little bit of surprise just for the purpose of entertainment. But if you wanted, if you just can't resist seeing what the effect looks like, you could take that tape off now. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to paint the figure, the man in blue, onto this surface. You know, I'm looking at it and thinking, well, I like the color that he used. I think it would actually work really well, but you know, I'm not going to paint another. I think in the future maybe I would have added a little bit of white to my to the paint, just to kind of lower the intensity of this brown that I have here. Right, it's kind of a little bit maybe too intense, but you know. If you want to do that, you can certainly do that. If I did that again, I might lose the figure entirely here. So, and you know, obviously once you learn this technique, you can do all sorts of fun things. So let's grab a brush here. Which brush? I swear some of these brushes have little feet and they run away. Here we are. I don't know why I have these ones separated from the bunch, but okay, so I got a couple of small brushes. So I'm going to use, you know, a little flat brush. These are kind of like when I'm getting into this detail kind of stage, I want kind of a real fine, pointy, round brush, and then this flat brush just for kind of laying in some color. So this blue, how do we get that blue? I think basically that blue looks like it's our cool blue with a little bit of white in it. Now I dabbed my brush in there and there's a bit of red in there. So I'm just going to put some blue to the side. I think it's... I'm going to put just a little bit of white in here. If I look at the painting here, this is pretty much that color, but if I add a little bit of white to it, it's just going to brighten up a bit and also cover the paint maybe a little bit more and stick out just a tad. So we'll see. I think that's good. The other thing I'm going to do, and you don't have to, but I'm going to add a little bit of the slow dry medium as well to this mixture. The slow dry medium, you know, does what it claims to do. It slows the drying time down. And, you know, when at this stage of the painting, there's not much to do, really. This figure is relatively straightforward. So part of a painting like this, you know, when we're reproducing a painting by a master like this, it's the precision becomes a little bit more important. If we want to kind of get as close to the original as possible, then having a little bit of that slow dry medium will allow me to, let's say I make a mistake, if I'm relatively quick, even within, you know, a minute or so, I can wipe it away and it'll disappear, and I won't have to be so stressed out about making it perfect. The other thing too is, let's say you've done this and you cannot see your image anymore; it's disappeared. You could try reapplying the carbon paper. You could try doing this whole process again. In fact, if you wanted, you could just skip this initial tracing and only do it at this step if you want. But you could also just take your pencil and just kind of gently kind of outline or redraw anything. So that might just kind of help. Like even mine. Mine is kind of gone enough that this will just save me a little bit of time kind of looking through the paint to see things. So I'm really not drawing these lines too dark. It's just and Bill Traynor also used a pencil for sketching and drawing his compositions in. So if your image also has a little bit of pencil in there, it's not the end of the world. It's quite close to how he did his, right? So if I want to refer to the original, like how he did some of these fingers. Okay, cool. So now I just have to put the paint in the right places. So wow, that's nice. That's really electric. I like how that looks on this paper color brown that I've applied here. It's kind of got a zip to it. Curious how many people are making this painting or painting one of his other paintings that I included. I included the couple animals in there. I thought maybe some people might want to do an animal instead of a person. Now, you can see his body is almost entirely blue, but it looks like he painted them separately. I don't think he used a different color, but I think he painted the pants blue, and then he painted the jacket blue, and then the shirt blue. So, like in the image, you can see there that there's those divisions between. So I'm gonna, rather than just painting one big flat color all the way across, I'm gonna try to do it a little bit like he does. And will it make? Does it seem a little bit like a bit of a waste of time? It could. It could seem at the very end that they blend in seamlessly, and I can't see any difference. But it's one of those little tiny things that when it's done, that might reward somebody who looks a little bit more carefully at the painting. And they look at it and go like, oh, did you paint the pants a different color? Or like, no, I just painted them separately. So the same color, but I just painted them on their own, so there's a little bit of a distinction between them, just as Bill Traynor did. So one thing I just want to think about is, does this jacket create like a seamless line behind these legs, right? If this comes down here and then this is here and this one's up here, it's going to look a little bit weird, right? So I want to almost like sort of draw an imaginary line that connects all of them together. Okay. So while that's drying, I'm now just going to come up here and do the pant leg. You could also leave a little tiny bit of the background color in between these lines. Maybe I'll do that. I don't know. We'll see. I might say I want to do that, and then I'm not capable, and then I'll make a mistake and just be like, you know what, let's see. Kind of like the same kind of little space between the pant leg and the shoe down here. But you know, I was thinking last night, like, what a life Bill Traylor lived. Like, in obviously many ways, like, the things that were done to him are just like unspeakable and horrific, and the whole you know, not concept, but the like slavery is just, I just can't even wrap my head around it. And being born into that, I don't know what's worse, is being free and then being captured by some, you know, marauding group of people, white people who came and stole people away from their families in the middle of the night and put them on boats. I don't know what's more tragic, that or being born on a plantation and not even knowing anything different, and just believing that this is what life is supposed to be. Obviously, some of the older folk in that he was around, I'm sure, would have reminded him and told him stories of things, but you know, just that whole thing would have just seemed relatively normal to him, which is, you know, one of the reasons why he stayed perhaps on that plantation after slavery was abolished. I think he didn't know anything different. He grew up his entire life on a plantation, and just you know, he was, you know, taught how to farm, and kind of a deal was proposed to him where he could stay on the farm and kind of keep his job, and he took that position, which, you know, is, again, as many people have said, slavery by another name, and that he was still doing all the same work he was doing with either, you know, I'm not sure if he was paid at all or just purely in exchange for living quarters and some food, which, you know, when you think about it, like, it's hard to really articulate, like, was there a difference? I don't know. Anyway, so I don't know, how do I feel about leaving that line there? His legs look much thinner now. I think I'm going to just paint it away. I'm going to paint it away. But I might keep little hints of it. And not, I'm not going to make it perfect. Just keeping a little hint there, I think might be kind of nice. Okay, let's go into his jacket and do the same thing here. I don't know what I haven't had a chance to read more. Just I've read one of the essays in that catalog, so I'm not sure exactly what the significance of this shape is on his chest. This what looks like an arrow. I think what it is an abstraction of like the shirt collar and buttons and vest on a suit, because some of the other ones actually show this triangle inverted the other way in a V shape rather than this A frame. So I think that's what it is. But he did use, like, he had a number of his own kind of iconography or shorthand that he developed, that he used over and over and over again. Like, I think one of the things that people often say, a misconception about so-called outsider art or folk art, is that these are people with low intelligence, and they're just sort of doing a bunch of like children's drawings or something. Now, I believe, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Bill Traynor did not know how to read or write. I'm pretty sure that's true. But that doesn't mean that he wasn't an intelligent person. I mean, he probably didn't have much of or any. I don't think he. Again, I don't know a lot about American history of that period, but I don't think there was like, the kids went to school or anything. The kids, as soon as they were able to, were put out into the field to pick cotton, and there wasn't any reason for them to be educated by their white slave owners, so-called masters. But obviously in the families would there was time at night where I'm sure they would teach them and talk to them about things. And okay, that's I like that so far. Oh, I just realized that's supposed to go all the way down. I don't know. It's not such a big deal, is it? Yeah, now that I'm looking at it, you can see here in the image to the left where he left a little bit of that jacket open there. Anyway, I think that's okay. I'm going to wash my brushes, and then we'll paint the black in here, and then we'll reveal. We'll peel this tape off, and we'll see what we have, and whether this effect worked or not. I don't think I got paint on these pants yet, but sometimes you don't notice until later on, where you're sitting down thinking, managed to keep all the paint off my Okay, so I've got some black here on my palette already. I'm going to use that, and again, I'm going to put some slow dry medium. I always find black dries a little bit faster and needs a little bit more of a slow dry medium. Let's stir that in there. I can mostly just use my small brushes for this. So I'll get that for maybe the hat ready to go. Okay. So, what should we do first? Maybe I'll do these shoes, and then I'm going to hit the blow dryer on this thing here. It's funny how, like, just that, put all of a sudden this black here on these shoes, this figure just all of a sudden starts to kind of come to life a little bit, right? I think I might just make this painting for today. But you have the templates there, so you can make the other ones if you want. And I think after last week's really, really long episode, some people were like, oh, are they all going to be 5 hours long? My goodness. Let me see. Let's get this hand up here. Often his figures, there's people who are pointing. I don't know what that means within his, language, vocabulary that he developed in these paintings. There's some people who have speculated that he used his paintings were deliberately vague in that they are intended to, like, that he's making social commentary in a veiled way to protect himself, that he didn't want to directly, like, I wouldn't consider myself an expert on his art, but I spent some time looking at videos and looking at that book, and there are videos or paintings of people chasing each other with axes and stuff, and is that, are those images based on things that he saw or experienced himself on the plantation, or are they purely fictional things from his imagination? I don't know. let's come up here into the head here. See if I can do this without getting my big hairy head in the way. It's kind of it's pretty awkward, but usually my head is floating right over the surface, but when I'm painting on my own, so. What we do for the cameras. So as I get close to doing this eye, I'm going to make sure that the eye is below, let's say, the brim of this hat, just so it doesn't look a little bit strange. Okay, so you see how I kind of did this line underneath the brim of the hat, and then I'm going to start with a nice big circle for that eye, and then I can always make it smaller. It's much harder to make it bigger once I've committed to that shape, so kind of start with a nice big outline. And I'm not going to put the dot in there for the eye just yet either. Very quiet chat tonight, which is funny. It was one of those things. Is it like a good Thanksgiving dinner where all of a sudden everybody goes quiet because people are busy chomping down on the food, or does that mean I'm just here all by myself? So on Thursday for our Paint the News class, this Thursday is International Women's Day. So I have a pretty clear idea of what I want to do already. A suggestion that my wife came up with, and generally, I just try to do whatever she tells me to do, and that's my seems to work out best when I do that. So I might take her idea for the painting, which I'll show you in a minute when I get a little bit closer here, if I can find the images I want to show. Oops, sorry, my big head in the way there. Okay. I might save the eye there to the very end. Let me see. should have just turned this canvas. Because it kind of looks a little, maybe it's like right in the middle, but he kind of also looks like he might be looking behind him a bit. I'm just gonna put my dot kind of right in the middle. So this paint is a little bit tacky, so I'm just going to add a little bit more slow dry medium. Often what people do when that happens is they just add more and more water to the mixture to make it a little bit more fluid, and which makes it easier to paint. But the more and more water you're adding there, you're also thinning the paint. So yeah, it's going on nice and thin, but then when it dries, it's semi-transparent, and you're sitting there going, oh, what happened? Now I got to do it again, and now I've got to do all of those little details a second time when I was really happy with the first time. The first time was a struggle, and now, oh my goodness. So that's why adding the slow dry medium helps, is it doesn't thin the paint. It does a little bit, but not nearly as much. So realizing his fingers are quite pointy, weren't they? I've kind of rounded them up. But details, details. Oh yeah, I thought I was about done, and then I realized, oh yeah, I've got to do this stuff here on his chest. Really feel compelled to want to paint those other paintings. I like them. Yeah, I like them so much, but I don't. You can see how long it takes just to get one done. So that might be future episode or something. These little fine lines are kind of tricky, right? It's kind of like doing the mesh in behind the Jacob Lawrence baseball painting, right? You just have to take your time. Just enlarging and thickening this up, right? Because I think these lines are supposed to be a little bit thicker, so I'm just darkening them a little bit. Okay. What do I think about that? Different colors. It's interesting how that different color really kind of changes things, doesn't it? Interesting. I think it's mostly good. I feel like I might want to just go over the shoulder there with that blue again just a little bit. I think I'm done with the black as I'm looking it over. So make sure I don't get my fingers on this. Pull up my sleeve a bit. So I'm going to peel this tape off in a moment. See what we got. Now, I'm debating in my mind whether to get rid of some of these lines. I think I'm just gonna very carefully make them a little bit thinner, just like I did kind of with the legs down here, just so they're not quite so visible. Tiny little things here. I'm going to widen this pant leg out a bit. I can see like, oh, places where these pants became really skinny jeans. I made them into a bit too much of a hipster there. Okay. I think that's pretty good. So, I'm going to blow dry this before I peel the tape off. I might need to go back and touch up that face just because, you know, when it's wet, it's sometimes hard to see. You get these reflections, and as I'm looking at it now, I see some of the paper, or I keep thinking paper, but this brown color coming through. think I got paint on my pants just yet. Okay, so now let's do some paint peeling here. Let's see, let's get, which angle does this look nice on? So I got a little bit, you know, it's quite thick the way the paint is, so it's almost kind of tearing a little bit. So if this happens, one thing you can do is take like a knife and just kind of gently go, I'm not even barely pressing, I'm just going along that edge, just to make it a little bit easier for that tape to give way. Ay, 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 see? I didn't even realize the paint went down. Okay, there's one. I can touch that up. Let's do the same thing. I'm just gonna... Ah, look, I got some of the white showing through. So I gotta touch up a little bit as we go. So when you think you're being really smart, well, if I was to do this again, I would make a little bit more of an effort to go a little bit further into the line, or literally paint out that white line. I did some bad cutting with my knife and actually cut further in there. I saw it as it was happening, but again, not the end of the world, because we can still clean all of this up. Okay, so which one do we want to work on? I still got a little bit of this paint. It's still a little bit wet. So this is the paint that we use for kind of the top edges and stuff. So let's just turn this around. Just have to be a little bit patient and kind of go into these areas. Not the wow effect I was hoping to get. And if I had... this is the opposite problem of paint leaking under the the tape. So rather than paint leaking under, I had no paint under the tape when I peeled it off because I didn't cut the tape properly when I used the knife. Not a big deal, but just a bit of a bummer. Okay. You can even put up the same color in some of these shadows. I might go back and darken them anyway, so we'll just get a little bit of paint in there. Yeah, interesting results, but now I'm just gonna, let's just darken this. So do I have any of this paint? I'm gonna have to just mix a little bit more. To make a dark color. Adding a little bit more of that shadow back. I kind of didn't do the best job of that shadow anyway. It kind of looks like a weird blob form down there. But what are you gonna do, right? I always just think, you know what? It's just painting. It's not rocket science. No one's life is depending on the success or failure of this painting. That's not bad. Now that, you know, if I look at it, it's kind of cool. I think also when I get it off this surface and it's on a white wall or something, it'll look much better. I could have also added maybe a little bit more, some wrinkles and texture onto that paper. That would be something, you know, for a future painting. I was thinking even a little bit while we were painting it, but I started to think like, oh, we're an hour and change into this painting and we've just painted a square onto a, we need to get into the actual act of painting this figure pretty quickly, so. Yeah, I mean, every painting is an adventure, right? And you know, at this exact moment, I am I have to get over that the painting looks different than I expected and wanted it to be when I began the painting. Now, does it mean it's a bad painting? I don't think so. I don't think it at all. In fact, you know, if when I take this upstairs and show it to my wife, it should be, oh, that's really cool. I'll be like, yeah, well, you know, this and that, and like she'll have, oh, well, I don't really, I guess, maybe, sure, I guess, I suppose. But I imagine that happens for a lot of people. You know, you create something and then you're like, not exactly what I wanted, but I don't know. I think it's pretty good, all in all. Let me see. Just again, going around here, just touching up some of these shadows. I mean, ideally, because obviously the light is coming down here, so this here should maybe be a little bit lighter, as if the paper is folded up. I could have even have had this page kind of folded up and a curl on the end. But you know what? We'll do that. We'll do that in a future painting. I keep on seeing these little bits that I want to just touch up and clean up ever so slightly. Okay. Yeah, do I have a poster paper? Just trying to isolate it a little bit from that. Kind of helps. Gives you a little bit truer idea of what it would look like on a wall. Okay. I think that turned out pretty good. It is weird with a red border like that. But I think it's pretty cool. Okay, so let's put our autographs on here. So, put my own name here. Oh, I almost put February. It's March. My goodness, time's flying. I also think it's you know, when you see me writing here, like, after, that is a typical thing that artists do to acknowledge that they are making a painting based on another person's art. And I think probably no artist is this more important than Bill Traylor, considering how he's been exploited his entire life and over the past 60 years since he died, 70 years since he died, right? So it's really important that we acknowledge that this isn't my painting, this is Bill Traylor's painting, and I've made a painting after, based on him. He's the one that came up with this original composition. Because the last thing I want to do is exploit him even further. This is somebody I have an immense amount of respect for, whose experience is in life is beyond my own comprehension. But the fact that he was able to create such incredible, stirring images, despite the horrible, traumatic things that happened to him in life. I think is both a testament to like the human spirit, and to his own you know, like the power that he must have had to like muster up within himself to continue moving forward, and to create these images, many of which are quite joyous images, despite all of what he saw and all of the things that happened to him over his life. Yeah. This is great. I feel actually now, the more and more I look at it, the more happy I am, and the more that I feel like this red around the edges actually works quite well. So that's one of the things I think often I just tell people, just let your painting sit overnight before you paint over it, before you throw it out, before you cut it in half or do whatever you want to it. Just give it, let it just kind of grow on you. Because often I think paintings, they might be great paintings, but we are so stuck in our mind about what we wanted them to be that we can't accept what they are, right? And I think that's almost like, so I think about how many other instances in life where that happens, right? We often don't get our way at all, and we think, oh, painting, this is something I can control and I can make it exactly the way I want it to be, and then you start painting and then you realize how difficult it is to control some of these things, and how much is left to chance, and the painting kind of starts taking on its own life. It's not unlike, you know, I'm a father raising a child and thinking like, oh, I hope she'll do the right thing and become this person that I have lots of hopes and dreams for her, but I don't know, I can only do my best, right? And the same sort of thing when you're making art. You're like, I'm going to put my best foot forward, and then at some point you just have to let go, right? Okay, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me again and for painting along with me while we made this painting by one of my favorite artists, and I'm not alone in saying Bill Traynor was a gift to the world, both in himself and the work that he left us. So I know it looks like a kind of a simple painting, but the more and more I'm looking at it, the more excited I am by the results. On Thursday, we're going to be making our a space-themed painting, because there is a young woman who has jumped over pretty much every hurdle that NASA has put forward for astronauts, and there looks like a good chance that she might be one of the very first people to step foot on the planet Mars, maybe within the next 10 years or so. So I want to make a painting kind of celebrating her and kind of all women in general, and their achievements, which are really our achievements, right? So just as, you know, everyone's, I think we're all in this one big boat together, right? And sometimes it feels like really, really big, and we don't even realize that we're on a boat together. But I think at the very end of the day, you know, especially when we're talking about planets, we only have one of them, right? And to get to another one, it's going to take this whole planet to kind of come together and work together to make that happen. So thank you, everybody, for joining me. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell down there, which lets you know that more videos are coming up and when they're happening and all that kind of stuff, because you've seen me do some of these videos kind of spontaneously. So if you want to know when they're happening, you want to hit that button. Join the Facebook page as well. I'd love to see your version of today's painting. And if you did another one, or all 5 of the ones I posted, or maybe you got so excited about Bill Trainer's work that you've gone and looked up, you've got that big book from the library, or you've ordered it on the web and you've decided, hey, I'm going to do a whole bunch more of these. This is a great book. Beautiful, stunning images in here. And yeah, long overdue that this artist is really acknowledged as being one of the great artists of all time. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening or morning, wherever you are on planet Earth. We will see you again on Thursday for our Paint the News class. We'll talk to you soon, everybody. Good night.